Alright, so if you're someone that's not a huge wrestling fan, but you liked the last episode, thank you for sticking with us. If you are a huge wrestling fan, then welcome back. We're still talking about wrestling and the music. It's going deep, man. We've got opinions. Me and Chris obviously both love wrestling, so let's get into it.
Well, it's probably a good time actually, to go into some of the ones that were runners up that we didn't vote in.
Yeah,
this is a good umbrella to mention.
Got a few.
Go for it. You first, and then I'll throw in a few.
So I'm thinking, just to go, because I mentioned recent things, I think the first thing I'd like to mention is a song called "Glorious Domination" by Bobby Roode.
Oh, it's so good.
It's brilliant.
I mean, it's so legitimately good.
Yeah, it's so on brand for the character. By this point, you've maybe done some Googling if you're not familiar, and we did mention Ric Flair. Bobby Roode's character is basically Ric Flair at this point. Like, it's exactly the same. Yeah,
he always comes out in a sort of fur-lined silk. What would you call it? It's like somewhere between a dressing gown or robe and a long smoking jacket. And the song basically sounds like Queen. It's this multi-part harmony. It is really, really catchy. I mean, before I even got in any way into that character, I was like, that is a really brilliant entrance. It's actually a good bit of music. And also, one of the first times I saw him doing it was an NXT special. NXT is like the sort of the reserves league or the feeder league,
the indie brand.
Him rising up on a plinth, just arms outstretched, backlit, and this multi-part harmony of glorious, and it was super, super well done. So yeah, I'm totally with you on that.
Also, since we're talking about NXT, "Catch Your Breath" for Finn Balor, his intro is just so good.
Absolutely. The problem with Finn Balor, this is a young Irish wrestler, and one of the most interesting guys, just a really, really good, went to Japan, made his name over there, came back, was super hot property, and he had this kind of alter ego, a kind of Jekyll and Hyde character of the Demon King, which WWE decided for whatever reason. I mean, I think Finn Balor felt it was overshadowing his persona or whatever, but it's a shame because the entrance for the Demon King, again, at one of the NXT specials, is up there with the best I've ever seen. It's genuinely, like, you know, if bearing in mind that wrestling is aimed at kids and big kids, it is like, it absolutely couldn't have been more on the money for being a buzz. I would call Battle Cry by Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega is one of the really hot properties just now.
That's interesting.
A lot of the Japanese wrestlers in New Japan wrestling is a really big thing. I've actually been to Japan to see a New Japan event, and it was brilliant. The culture's quite different. It's much more gender balanced. The audience is quite different in its responses, but it's a huge thing for them over there. Very skillfully done, you know, really, really big culture around it, but they love their power metal and their proggy stuff. I mean, even the Japanese wrestlers that go over here are huge into that. But Battle Cry by Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega isn't Japanese, but he's got a sort of Terminator type character
over there. He had, yeah.
And this tune is just a belter. It's a bit like Dragon Force, actually. Yeah, super hot property, that guy as well, who's pissed off WWE no end by not signing for them.
He's one of the best in the world as well. If this somehow makes you vaguely interested in wrestling, you should definitely YouTube his matches with Okada. There's three of them, and they're just outrageous.
Yeah, and on that note as well, there's a track called Grand Sword by a Japanese wrestler called Kenta Kobayashi. Which is again more this like Japanese power metal. It's amazing. Like it really, really suits it. It gets your adrenaline going. You know, I've been in an arena, when this stuff comes on, and it's such a buzz. It really is. It's mega loud. The lights go up. Everybody around you is just. It's fun. I mean, if you don't think it's fun, then peace. I would say, I mentioned Sami Zayn already, a Japanese wrestler that made it over to the States and made it pretty big, although he's probably still debatably underutilised, is a guy called Shinsuke Nakamura.
Yes.
He has an entrance theme with violins that really works really well.
He's
for
got
his character.
two, right? So when he was a good guy, when he was a face, he just had like the instrumental version of it, and now that he's a bad guy, he's a heel, he's actually got like Japanese rapping over it, and it just makes it sound so different, and it really suits his character.
I would say also, in that note, Asuka. Female Japanese wrestler, her track The Future. It's an absolute belter, but it's a complete rip-off of 21st Century Schizoid Man by King Crimson. I mean, it's so similar.
Yeah, I mean, talking about rip-offs, one of the things that I wanted to bring up was Self High Five, DDP's theme tune in WCW, and it is literally, it smells like Teen Spirit.
Self High Five.
It has the exact same. It's one chord different, but it's played the same way, and it's also got the 2-note guitar bit in the verse. There's no vocals, but yeah, it's pretty blatant.
One that I didn't put in my top 5, but I do think it's really good, and it ties into what Mark mentioned earlier on, where real bands get involved, is the track King of Kings by Triple H.
Behold the King of Kings. On your knees, dog.
Which is performed by Motorhead, and Triple H actually had gone to the extent of getting Motorhead onto shows to do the tracks live, and it was really fucking cool. That fitted his character so well. It was one of the best chosen bits of sync music, I think.
But Bad Reputation as well. Ronda Rousey used that when she was competing. And
Ronda Rousey, yeah.
Joan Jett played it at WrestleMania as she walked out, which is again just a cool as fuck thing. You know, it's the song suits her very, very well. It's not a wrestling song, but it kind of falls into it. I suppose it's probably a delineation we should probably make, which maybe I should have made sooner. Is like when we start talking about our top 5s, and there's two different ways that we need to look at this kind of music. There's good songs, and then there's songs that just fit the character despite the fact they're not actually songs or actually good songs.
Like Doink the Clown.
Yeah.
Do you have any more runners up? Because I've got 5 absolute belters that I'm dying to talk
about. I do have a few, yeah.
Right,
you mentioned Eddie Guerrero, Latino Heat.
Latino Heat.
Chica, ¿tú quieres probar a un latino más? Ven conmigo. Come on.
Really, really good. Enjoy that. You might mention the other side of this coin, but Hulk Hogan became a bad guy in the late 90s. He moved to WCW and he joined NWO, and they've got a really iconic theme tune called Rock House.
World Order.
It's still, I think it's arguably as good as original, Really American. It's just it just suits the sleazy nature of like him and Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, and the way NWO were like really duplicitous and, you know, quite underhanded, and the music is like this kind of funky but rock. You could hear it in a strip club. It's not
I mean, I'm sure they did.
Yeah, they probably did. Yeah. And one thing which did not make my top 5 but is absolutely worth talking about, and I've got a list of these which I could go on for ages. In fact, I'm going to do 2 more, right? I'm going to do 2 more.
Right.
Actually, no, I'm going to do 3 more. Sorry, I'm going to do 3 more. Right. The time is now. You talked about it, John Cena's theme tune. You talked about how it's like pure cultural appropriation, and it is, and his character really was at the time. He was the Dr. Thugonomics. He was a white rapper. He would come on.
Does anyone not know who John Cena? I mean, even if you hate wrestling, surely can you picture John Cena? He's sort of like Mark Wahlberg if they took him out the oven too soon or something.
Yes.
He's like just a side of white beef. I don't really know what to say. He seems like a really nice guy.
He does.
Well.
He seems like a really awesome dude.
Seems like a really good guy, but he's such a chode.
And he released an album called You Can't See Me, which is him rapping with the trademark. Sorry. But his intro theme is iconic. It just speaks to the character, and it really, really works for him as a wrestler. The song itself is garbage, but it really works. And before I talk about good songs though, Cult of Personality. You know,
that is a belter. Living Colour.
Yeah, CM Punk had that. One of his stipulations for when he left WWE, I'm using like quote marks here for left. He came back and he said that he would only come back if he could. One of the preconditions, or was I meant there was a few, but it was only if he could use Cult of Personality by Living Colour as his theme music. It works, suits him down to the ground as well. And finally, possibly one of the most important songs is No Chance in Hell, because it's Vince McMahon's theme tune. It is the owner's theme tune.
And again, let's talk about Vince McMahon, right? This is a guy who's what, 70 what now?
In his mid-70s, yeah.
I mean, he's just such a horrible, like, he's like Frankenstein's monster of all the biceps of all the people that died. And all this. I mean, it's like he's just been he's like grave robbing biceps and stuffing them under his loose skin for the last decade. The guy's horrendous. Like, he's just a horrendous looking guy, and probably a horrendous human being as well.
Yeah,
big Trump fan. His wife actually works for Donald Trump, and she's
in the cabinet.
Yeah. Not the best, and I mean, definitely in the process of driving his company down the toilet.
Yeah, but you know, that's the thing, like, he's going to give over to his future son-in-law, his current son-in-law, sorry, is going to be the person, Triple H, and you've already mentioned King of Kings, and there's a whole story behind him and behind the Clique, which I recommend you go and check out online if you don't know about it, as to why Triple H is in the position that he's in, and why a couple of other people one other person we're going to mention really soon was Triple H's pal, are in positions of power in this company. and that's really fascinating. So if this has somehow piqued your interest, then please go and look at the history of the Click and the Montreal Screwjob and the curtain call incident. All those things will really fill you in it. Like, even though this all happened more than 20 years ago now, they'll all kind of fill you in as to why wrestling is in the state it's in just now.
This is the thing with wrestling, because there's a lot of like fake drama, and then there's a lot of actual drama, and then there's a lot of drama that you think is fake but is probably actual, and then there's a lot of drama that you think is actual but is actually probably fake. And this is also the whole concept called kayfabian, which is to do with the kind of contract of you going to see wrestling and you know that it's fake, and they know that you know it's fake, but that you both agree that you're going to suspend that disbelief to get to the end goal, which is enjoyment. And ultimately, if you're not enjoying this podcast, it's because you're not making the effort to suspend your disbelief and get to the end goal of enjoyment. So really, it's not our fault, it's your fault. Okay?
So your runners-up, come on, hit us with some more.
Those were my runners-up. What I think we should do now is...
The top five?
Probably the most exciting thing. No, not the top five. I think we should do our three, right?
Okay.
So the three songs from real life that would have made great wrestling themes.
Okay.
Do you want me to go first?
Yes, you go first.
All right. Number 3 would have been Them Bones by Alice in Chains.
Okay. I can see it.
I mean, the thing, a lot of wrestling themes just ask, was it Steve Austin? Who else? Ric Flair. Like, the first 2 seconds of a wrestling theme is probably the most important part of the theme, especially if it's something like Royal Rumble, where you're just waiting for that noise to find out who's coming out.
Yeah.
And Them Bones with that at the start, perfect. And I mean, the fact that it's got lines in it like "Some say we were born into the grave." But obviously you've got to have a really 90s character at that. You've got to have this rugged, sort of long-haired, scraggly guy in like those kind of elasticated ripped jeans. Where you're like, how can he wrestle in those, until you realise that they're actually like sprayed on. I'm going to call this wrestler Kurt Washington.
Nice.
And his special move is going to be the Melvin.
Oh, nice. I like it.
All right.
So my song is Blood and Thunder by Mastodon.
Ah, that's a good one. I mean, you're properly going for the legit metal.
Yeah.
On that, though. Yeah.
The next one's going to take a massive right turn, by the way, just to let you know. But this is like, it comes back to what you just said there, man. Right? It's the first 5 seconds, and this is kind of frantic, and then it's got the little pause, and then you're into the full song. I think that's cool. Obviously, right, the character that this is for is a guy called Ahab.
Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah, I like that.
And
you could have said Ishmael though.
Yeah,
because then it could have been
could
called
be a tag
Ishmael.
team.
Yeah.
And this is a big ginger bruiser. You know, like Braun Strowman, like definite power lifter, like 6.5 feet tall, 8 to 7 feet tall. You know, big guy. And clearly he's going to be doing a pile driver because he's not allowed to do them anymore. So he's like,
he's going to have a better name than that though.
Ahab.
No, but I mean the pile driver's going to have.
Yeah, I mean I don't know. The anchor.
What was the name of the ship in Moby
Dropping
Dick?
the anchor.
Come on, you studied literature.
I can't remember the name of the ship. What's the name of the ship?
This is really embarrassing for you.
Is it? Oh fuck! What is it? I can't remember. Sorry.
Maybe he could have a move called the Leviathan.
Maybe that would be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like just a massive clothesline. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your next one?
Man, like, so I kind of debated going really cool. There's a track called All the Rage by Girls Against Boys.
What's new?
Which is just this really chunky sort of riffy thing, but the vocals are really sexy, and it'd be some super cool dude. But nah, I dinged that. I also always thought that Closer by Nine Inch Nails would be a pretty good track.
That'd be good.
But I dinged that as well. I went a little bit more obscure, and I'll put a sample in that. Hopefully you agree. A track called Come With You by Millionaire. Just this obscure alternative Belgian band. And I'm not even sure if this is a male or a female wrestler, but what it is it's sassy. It's a kind of Prince type vibe, this song. Really, it's got a line in it. The main line in it that gets repeated is, "They say I can't, but I do what I want to."
Mm-hmm.
And that is the sort of attitude of just a sort of irreverent upstart, cheeky heel. I mean, given that I don't know if they're male or female, I'd have to go for something, I don't know, kitty boobs. I don't think that's going to work.
Nah.
I mean, I've absolutely no idea. No, I mean, I really badly want to cut that out as well.
Start again.
Just a little pain in the ass, but sort of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's my one.
So the next one, I'm quite proud of myself for this one. I hope people like it. Rule Britannia.
Has nobody used that?
I don't know, but
the British Bulldog not have that?
Possibly, actually. Yeah, probably did, actually. But yeah, this has obviously got a totally different connotation in this period in time. This is for a female heel character called Karen Hopkins, who's a cross between the Karen meme and Katie Hopkins.
Yeah, I was way ahead of you.
Pure xenophobe, and she comes out to Rule Britannia, and of course, her finisher is the Cliffs of Dover.
Oh,
which is just like an avalanche suplex from the top rope.
I would have liked it if you'd called it the Lancaster Lockdown, but
yeah,
but that's a pretty solid recommendation. Okay, so the third one is me. This is my wrestling theme.
This is you,
right? I've really stuck between two songs. Okay. Really stuck, and I'm sorry. I know I'm bending the rules, right? But either Grounds for Divorce by Big Business.
Mm-hmm.
Or This Stops at the River by Unsane. I'm going to put a sample in here, and you guys can pick what you think is the most impressive. But one of those two. Now, I like to fancy myself as having one of those two as my entry music. I mean, in real life, my entry music is probably more likely to be It's Only Natural by Crowded House. But still, like, indulge me here. If I go for the Unsane one, my move is going to be the Vi Queen, and my character is going to be clearly called Chet the Harbinger.
Harbinger. Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I like it. So mine's is going to be People Who Go Shit by Slipknot.
Again, that's going to cost you. I'm just saying, Slipknot are not going to fuck around with those publishing rights.
They're not, but you know, I'm working for WWE, so they can afford it. Especially when they've got Code Orange doing theme tunes for Bray Wyatt. I think it's going to be fine.
That's true.
So yeah, close friend of Corey Taylor, incidentally, Code Orange. My character's called the Glazer because it's Mark Fraser. I'm going to be the Glazer.
Like, imagine you turning up with a pencil in your mouth, just being like, "Oh, that's really going to cost you."
Actually, I'm coming out. I'm a hardcore wrestler.
Is that what you're going to do?
I'm a hardcore wrestler. I'm coming out with panes of glass. I'm smashing people with them. Like, I'm just.
Yeah, that. I mean, when you cut your promo, that is going to be you. You're going to be like,
"It's going to cost you."
That's really going to cost you.
Yep, and that's me standing there with either a bag of broken glass or a pane of glass. And
you realise that the glass breaking meme has already been done by so many wrestlers at the start of their theme.
Yeah, and it's not going to. My theme's not going to start with that because it's going to start with just the actual song itself. But my finisher's going to be probably the window pane, obviously.
Oh, that's pretty good actually. The word pane. I was going to say the defenestration.
Yeah, it's just going to be a Mitsubishi driver, which is one of my favourite moves. Obviously, and
Double
also
Glazing for a tag team.
I should also state, just for people who know me, to put this picture clearly in your head.
I mean, you didn't laugh when I said Double Glazing for a tag team.
That's actually quite good. Apologies, I didn't hear that. I was too busy thinking about. Yes, so my ring attire is going to be like a gold sequin singlet.
Oofed.
Yeah.
So you're going to start wearing that in the ring now instead of just around the house.
Aye.
Right, top fives.
Okay. What I start with number 5 then?
Do you want to start this time?
Yeah, okay. I'm going for a deep cut, right? So if you're American, you may not have heard about this wrestler. He is for the Tap End of Stevenson, which is a town in Ayrshire. And famously, this man is called Grado. He's now an actor too. He does panto. He actually literally does panto, which is which is a bit of a crossover, I suppose. But he used to come out to like a prayer by Madonna. Which is just cute as fuck, man.
It was brilliant. It was so effective as well. Like, the whole place would be bouncing.
Yeah.
Nobody taking themselves seriously.
Especially him.
Especially him. He's a good choice.
Pretty great, I think.
Is it me?
Yep, sure.
I am going to go for the perfect chauvinistic anthem, and I think I'm going to go for what sums up wrestling in the minds of a lot of people, and it's the track Ass Man by Billy Gunn.
I'm an ass man.
Yeah, I'm an ass man.
As you say, I'm an ass man. Do you want to know some more lyrics from that song?
Yes, please.
I'm an ass man. Yeah, I love to love him. I love to kick him. I love to shove him. I love to stick him. I love to flaunt him. I love to watch him. I love to pick him. that one didn't land right.
No.
Picking an ass. They feel like little crusty bits there. Anyway, I don't need to go into detail there. It's also got a line in the chorus, or 2 lines in the chorus, which are fucking priceless. So many asses, so little time. The best surprises always sneak up from behind.
That's well considered. I like that.
It's brilliant. I mean, it's pure Spinal Tap at the end there, but yeah, that's the id. That is the id of wrestling right there.
It totally is. That's what the fans are paying for really, at the end of the day, right? So my next choice is Here Comes the Money.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money.
Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar. Ching, ching, bling, bling. Got the chatter. You ain't talking money, then you're talking.
Shane. So Shane McMahon is the son of Vince McMahon. It's him really well, man. It's a song about money. He's the son of the CEO. He thinks he's untouchable. They recently trolled the entire like wrestling community by giving him the title of the best wrestler in the world and giving him a trophy for it, which just sent the whole internet wrestling community an absolute fucking meltdown. It was, now that you look back on it, it's like, that's actually a pretty funny joke. They were clearly thinking about that.
And his whole thing was that he used to be just super obnoxious, like a spoiled brat. He's like, actually, a lot of similarities with Donald Trump Jr.
Yes.
Don Jr.
Yes.
It really, like, if you want to try and imagine what Shane McMahon's character used to be, it was Don Jr. I mean, I think that's an interesting one as well, because for anyone that watches wrestling, especially these days, because he doesn't do as much stuff now, when you hear that, you know it's probably going to be a big fall match, and it's usually happening during a big event. So it's kind of by association now. It's like, what the fuck is this crazy motherfucker going to do to himself? Because this guy's famous for, he doesn't do a lot of shows, but he's famous for jumping, 50 feet onto a table and shit like this. I mean, really hurting himself as well. Like, the guy is a total daredevil.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he puts his body in the line. I think so. That song tends to elicit both excitement and apprehension, because watching Shane McMahon matches, you're sometimes really wincing and sort of looking at it through fingers, like, oh, don't do it.
Mm-hmm. Do you want some lyrics for this song? I think they really fit the man himself. Here comes a new kid on the block. Hold your bets, because here's where the buck stops. See, first of all, I'm stepping out on my own. About time I elected to claim my own throne.
So whack.
It's also got the great line, pores reeking testosterone.
I mean, that's more on the money. Okay, my next choice, my number 4 out of 5 is, and I'm glad that I've got a chance to include this, because it's I Hope You Suffer by AFI, which is used by the wrestler Jimmy Havoc. Now, Jimmy Havoc is not a big-time WWE wrestler. He's an indies guy. He wrestles with ICW, for example, which is a Scottish company. Mm-hmm. He wrestles in All Elite Wrestling. He wrestled with Progress, Defiance, loads and loads and loads of different companies. But I like the fact, and this is what we were talking about earlier on, where he's using an existing song, and that song really does work. I mean, you basically made me investigate AFI when you nominated them, and that was, if you recall, one of the very few songs from that I was like, I'll listen to this again. This is actually a really good song. And it really, really works brilliantly. I mean, the fact that it's I Hope You Suffer, and he's got a kind of gothy, masochistic character anyway. He's like an emo, really. But that song is all about the space in the riffs. And as we mentioned earlier on, with all those big old school, Chris Benoit, Brock Lesnar, it's about the space between the guitar riffs, and this song totally gets it. And it's just it's a great match. It's a really good choice.
Yeah, that's a great choice. I didn't even know that he'd had that, because I've only seen his work in AEW. I haven't seen his work in ICW and all that. So I'm going to put this on the air just now. We should definitely go to an ICW show when we can, because I've never been to one.
They're good fun. Don't expect to wear your clothes again the next day.
Oh, that makes sense.
A lot of beer flying about.
Yeah.
I once saw the wrestlers at ICW go rogue, leave the ring, and then one of them threw the other one through the beer pumps across the bar in the ABC, and the bar staff were not briefed and not amused.
Jeez.
It was absolute carnage. But I mean, the building burnt down, so what's the problem?
Yeah, it's not an issue anymore. My number 3 is Break the Walls Down, which is Chris Jericho's theme tune.
One, break the wall, break down the walls, flip over the back to rock, and what you want, baby, you know you're Judas, and I'm your priest, baby, what I got is not from the least.
A great wrestler as well.
Yeah, so I wanted to actually pick this for 2 reasons. One, because the song is super iconic. So I'm old enough to have had a cable box which did not have any subscription on it, because I don't even know why that was, but one of the free channels was TNT, and WCW was shown on that. And I remember watching Chris Jericho in 98, 99 and thinking, this guy's fucking really good. And then he vanished from my screen and I had no idea why.
Can I just say, I love it when someone sounds like they're going to say fucking amazing, and then they kind of rein it in and go fucking no bad.
He moved to WWE, or WWF as it was at the time, and his debut was hyped really well, and he arrived on the scene as Y2J, because obviously
I was going to say the Y2J song's pretty good as well.
Yeah. But this is, for me, this is what he used all the time afterwards, and he's a wrestling genius. He's not a Hall of Famer yet, but he definitely will be. He's one of the best in the world, one of the best there's ever been, and apparently a very nice dude as well. I like this song because
he also sings in a metal band.
Yeah,
he used to sing in a black. Did they not start? Fozzy started as a Black Sabbath cover band,
yeah.
And then they became their own metal band. They played they tour quite a lot.
Yeah, so that's actually what I was about to mention. I was going to segue into that. Is that one of the cool things that I like about his career is that he's always referencing the past whilst creating new characters. He had a reputation for being quite a duplicitous heel, and he's always been a very kind of arrogant and difficult to like wrestler generally. But one of the first lines in this song is, for those about to rock, I'm what you want, baby, you know you're Judas and I'm your priest, right? Which is obviously a really on the nose lyric, but now that he's not in WWE anymore, he's actually got a Fozzy song which is his music, called Judas. He's got a new finisher called the Judas Effect. So it's like he's given the whole thing his whole character and his whole career thought when he's doing these things, and I think that's really, really cool.
Funnily enough, when I went to Japan for the trip I mentioned earlier on, he was one of the main attractions. He was their sort of guest foreign wrestler. Who was it he fought against? Okada?
I think it might have been Okada.
Yeah. Anyway, my third choice, and it's a fucking belter, and Mr. Kurt Angle, and the track is actually called Medal.
You suck.
I don't. He actually had a reprise of this called "I Don't Suck."
Yeah.
I don't suck. 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 I don't.
Now the reason is that Medal. By the way, it wasn't actually written for him. It was written for a wrestler called the Patriot.
Really?
And yeah, Kurt Angle reappropriated it, but. It's clearly a sort of nod to Rocky. It's got this big arena fanfare. I'll put a bit of it in, obviously. It's almost got a sort of like Roman Colosseum classical old world feel to it. And I think given like Kurt Angle is a sort of, he was an Olympic wrestler, he was an Olympic gold medalist, that's a big part of his shtick on the show. He wears like old school wrestling attire, very traditional style wise, very very technical, and it fits with the character really well to have this kind of callback into history. But yeah, I think it's really effective. But it's also the extra genius of that is that those two big horn blasts, the bam bam, the audience clicked and just started singing "You Suck," and this followed this guy for years, and he just became like beyond a meme of just like you think it's the name of the song. Like this guy's song is called "You Suck," hence why he then sort of referenced it and released "I Don't Suck." But he really played on that brilliantly as well. He was such a good heel, and just everything about him, including his song, was synonymous with how much the audience loved to hate him and hated to love him, if you know what I mean. It was a really good illustration of how in wrestling and in films and in, you know, most literature, like quite often the bad guys are the most interesting guys. And yeah,
it's interesting that as well, because he's retired now and he was on WWE programming as a kind of authority figure, I suppose you could say. And even when the crowd like him, they still chant "You suck." It's like so ingrained now as a thing. Yeah,
and he's loving it. He's just whipping it along. Yeah,
it's
absolutely
brilliant, you know. And it's I love the way that one of the things that I enjoy the most about wrestling, and I think it is definitely also worth mentioning, is that the best ones react so quickly to the changes in the crowd mentality, and sometimes they will actually use that as part of their character going forward. And I think that's a really clever storytelling mechanism, which people don't really talk about very much.
Yeah, and it's also, again, sorry to go too deep, but it's also part of why the Roman Reigns character struggled for so long, because the management refused to let him react to the heat, to the negative reaction. They were like, no, stay face, stay the course. We're going to make that audience like you. And it was very obvious that the audience hated the fact that we're having this rammed down their throat. And it's just interesting. It's an interesting sort of meta dynamic when you watch wrestling, because there is that kayfabe thing that we know it's fake. We're not pretending it's not scripted. We know these outcomes are predetermined. It's about the journey there, but it's also about the fun of this sort of pretense that we're all engaged in. We're all involved in the act. It's not just the wrestlers, it's the audience, it's everybody. You have to suspend your disbelief, and in those sort of situations it really comes into focus. Who's your third?
Well, my second.
Well,
what you were saying actually ties quite nicely into this next person that I'm going to mention. The thing that I enjoy about wrestling, apart from the way that the wrestlers can react to the reaction like that, is like, even though we're all on this contract, we've all got this like sort of sense of verisimilitude like between us. We all know what we're talking about and thinking about and kind of feeling. There's always that little bit of unknown reaction between the fans and the promotion, which can result in something really strange happening. I don't just mean in the ring, because sometimes cool shit will happen accidentally, and sometimes sadly tragic shit can do that as well. But one really good example of that, and there's still a lot of chat to this day as to whether it was engineered or not, was the pipe bomb by CM Punk, you know, and changed the wrestling landscape when that happened in 2013. And he was deeply unhappy at the company, and if you can go back, and Chris mentioned Colt Cabana way back at the start, if you go back and listen to the podcast he did with Colt Cabana after he left WWE in 2016, you can actually kind of hear a little bit more about why he was so unhappy and what led him to leave. Before he did the pipe bomb, he was in charge of a group called Nexus, funnily enough.
Well, sorry, can I just, I don't want to presume too much. Like, the pipe bomb was basically where he came out, and instead of doing the usual running down to the ring, standing in the middle of the ring, all these kind of things, he walked out onto the entrance ramp and then just sat down and crossed his legs and just sort of chatted into the microphone to the audience, and given that you're in a full arena, it was very informal and also super critical of the company, very scathing. And so there was a really acute moment of kayfabe where people were like, is this staged? Is this real? Because the fact that there's still dubiety over it is pretty amazing. I mean, I think it was real.
Yeah.
It seemed pretty authentic, but it's brilliant that they've been able to spin it into ambiguity, probably to both their benefits, because CM Punk didn't do well in UFC, but yeah, it's a really, really interesting illustration. So the pipe bomb was this sort of like mic drop guy coming out saying that he's sick of this shit and basically slamming the mic down, mic drop.
And I said earlier on, when I picked Cult of Personality, when he returned after all this shit had happened, he was given this, he said I wanted a theme tune, and he was given that song, which is a great song. But before that, he had a song called This Fire Burns by Killswitch Engage. And they didn't.
I mean, that made a lot of fucking cash for that band.
It did, you know, and they didn't even write it for a wrestler. I think they were asked to be part of. Well, they'd released their album As Daylight Dies, and I think this was like a cut that didn't make that record. And WWE approached them to do the theme song for Judgment Day 2008, and they had this song, and that was used. And then at some point down the line, it was then probably very soon afterwards, I would imagine, it was given to CM Punk, and actually really suits his character down to a T, you know.
Well, he's a straight edge vegan hardcore punk type character anyway. Yeah.
But like the lyrics are actually really, really interesting in how they fit as well. It's like, all I ever wanted was my destiny to be fulfilled. This fire burns always, tomorrow's in my eyes, I want it to be denied. It's
fuck, I'm cringing so hard.
Yeah, no, like it's totally on the nose. But when you think about like how his character was always an underdog and always somebody that never felt as though they were getting their worth, you know, and given that he was in the Nexus at the time, who were basically up against the corporation and the powers that be, it really fits with the character, you know, like that's why I like it so much.
It's still murder police though.
I mean, it's still super, like, it's fucking metalcore, man. It's not going to be amazing, but I think it's a good song regardless of the content of the lyrics, and it fits him. It fit him really, really well. Cult of Personality did the exact reverse, right? Because he'd obviously realised this was now a Cult of Personality and was like playing on that. And that song has also got some really horrible lyrics.
It's just a banging song,
but it's also a banger. Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to go at the opposite end of the spectrum for my number 2. Sexy Boy, Shawn Michaels.
I think I'm cute. I know I'm sexy. I've got the looks that drives the girls wild. I've got the moves that really move them. I said chill, up and down there.
All right. Sexy Boy is iconic. You must have heard this, even if you haven't listened to wrestling, or if you've ever walked through a room when somebody else was watching wrestling and this has been on, it'll never leave you. This was written by the guy we spoke about, Jimmy Hart, and the original version was Sean's manager, Sensational Sherry. She sang the vocals on it.
Really?
He makes me hot. He makes me shiver. My knees get weak when he comes around.
There's a fair amount of purists that still prefer that, and I know they were like, oh, you know, the lyrics are all about singing about this sexy boy and like it doesn't suit because he's a man's man, and you're like, nah, that's why it works. That's why it's so, like, the point is his character is so narcissistic, so in love with himself. You know, he double-crossed his teammate Marty Jannetty and then came out as this horrible, self-absorbed ladies' man heel. And I think him singing about Sexy Boy is the perfect fit. And he's such a bad singer. It's so badly mixed. Like, the fact that the vocals just, it sounds like karaoke.
I make him hot. I make him shiver. Their knees get weak whenever I'm around. They see me walk. They hear me talk. I make them feel like they're on cloud nine.
It's fucking terrific. That it's so funny. Like, it makes you smile. It's that point in wrestling where you really see the difference between wrestling and UFC, and you're like, I'm having a really fun time just listening to this stupid fucking song. It is so ridiculous. I love it. I love the absurdity of that whole moment. The other thing and this is one of those moments where I really want anybody with the inside scoop to give us a message. I am sure, I watched quite a lot of like interviews with wrestlers and stuff, and I am pretty sure from memory that Shawn Michaels related a story of being in the studio when he was recording this, and I can't remember who it was. I've got both Motley Crue and Eddie Murphy in my head, and I can't remember how the fuck I ended up between one of those two, but long story short, I am sure there's a really funny story about him being in the studio. He was there with like loads of girls trying to singing really fucking badly along with this track, and there was some kind of hijinks. If you know the details of that story, can you please tell us? Because I tried to find it before we recorded and I couldn't, but I do remember really enjoying it when I heard it the first time.
Also worth saying, we spoke a little bit about Chris Jericho. Shawn Michaels is also one of the most important wrestlers, one of the best to have ever done it.
Talked about great matches like the Omega matches, but the Shawn Michaels Taker matches are just wrestling like ridiculous, overblown WWE at its best. Like just amazing theatre. Another
great wrestling match that Shawn Michaels was part of is when, like, after he lost the title in 1998, I believe, he retired for 4 years. He needed to get back surgery quite badly, actually. He dropped it to Steve Austin after winning it off of Bret Hart during the Montreal Screwjob, which I'd recommend that you go check out. There's a really excellent documentary called The Dark Side of the Ring, which is done by Vice.
That's amazing.
I believe you can get it on all four. It's phenomenal. Go check it out. Lots of like really dark stories about all the bad shit that's happened in wrestling.
Mankind.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah. But one of the best matches he had is when he came back from retirement and fought a guy called Triple H, who we've mentioned before. He is currently the man's name is Paul Levesque. He's currently the Executive Vice President of Global Talent and Strategy Development, and he is Shawn Michaels' best pal. And his theme tune, The Game by Motorhead, is just fucking amazing.
Time to play the game. Time to play the game.
His second theme tune by Motorhead, after King of Kings. Yeah,
he was actually really good friends with Lemmy, and he's a really well-known metal fan as well. NXT actually do shows at Download Festival every year because of his relationship with a lot of metal bands and stuff like that. But ultimately, this song is just really iconic.
It's all about the game and how you play it. All about control, and if you can take it, all about your debt. And if you can pay it, it's all about pain. And who's gonna make it? I am the game, you don't wanna play me.
You know, it's a really good tune, which kind of it supersedes everything that we've a lot of things we've spoken about so far, because it's just a good song in general. It's really recognisable. It speaks about the character and his motivation. You know, that his nickname, The Game, comes from him saying in a promo once, "I'm not the best in the game, I am the game." It's just such an arrogant sounding song, and he is so arrogant. You know, when I was younger, I used to hate him so much, and I was like, that guy is so fucking overrated. But over the past few years, I've watched a few of his matches with my flatmate, because he's got the WWE Network, and sometimes he'll just pop one on, and man, storytelling was so good at it. He is so good at it, and he's not a good technical wrestler. He's a big hoss. Takes so much fucking punishment as well, man. This song just suits all of that about this guy's character. There are very few theme songs which like nail down a person, and this is one of them. Sexy Boy is also another one of them. Bret Hart's theme tune, which we spoke about earlier on, is arguably another really good example, and there's another one I can think of, but I'm not entirely sure what that is, Chris.
Oh, well, could it be the absolute archetypal wrestling anthem, an 80s anthem? And I've got a horrible feeling that the 80s might actually turn out to have been the best era of Western culture, and that's pretty fucked up when you consider the 80s. But this tune for me it doesn't get more 80s. The WWE and the Cold War and Go America and flag waving and Ronald Reagan and Hulk Hogan and the track Real American.
I am a real American, fight for the rights of every man. I am a real American, fight for what's right, fight for your life.
I mean, the thing is, you know, in a playlist of like guilty 80s pleasures with like Bon Jovi and REO Speedwagon, this tune's totally on there, man. It's fucking brilliant. It's absolutely ridiculous.
I am a real American, fight for the rights of every man. I am a real American, fight for what's right, fight for your life.
It was also another one a bit like the Kurt Angle thing, not originally written for Hulk Hogan. It was written for both Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo, who I don't know why they didn't end up using it, but it's that maximum kind of testosterone USA. It's a ridiculous piece of music that just totally fits. And given that Hulk's an obnoxious prick in real life as well, it just kind of doubles down. It was written by a guy called Rick Derringer. Rick Derringer, if you want to know who he is, sang the track Hang On Sloopy.
Cause you know, Sloopy girl, I'm in love with you. And so I say now, hang on, Sloopy, Sloopy, hang on.
By the McCoys, the track that went to number 1. The backing vocals on this song are by Cyndi Lauper.
There we go. Bringing it full circle there, Chris.
Aye, and she goes under the pseudonym Mona Flambe.
Nice.
on the credits. Also, the guy that wrote it, Rick Derringer. The thing is, wrestling's so insincere, but the thing is, Rick Derringer really believes this song. That's kind of why it's so brilliantly realised, because he is a fucking knob. He's an evangelical Christian, like extreme conservative. I mean, we're talking about a guy that not so long ago was convicted for taking a loaded gun onto an aeroplane and then saying, I just assumed that was okay. You know, I mean, he is a fucking piece of work. And he believes every single... He doesn't see it as being an ironic, funny song. He sees it as being like a right-on banger, anthem. I'm completely behind this. Why is everybody laughing? Doesn't get it at all. Doesn't get the joke, but I mean, it's just absolutely fucking brilliant. It's perfect. It's the perfect wrestling song. And as you said, Hulk was the first real face of the company in that big time sense, and this was the tune that went along with that, that made that happen.
And he still when he has granted an appearance these days, because he's an extremely problematic individual, still use that same song.
Indeed he does. And that, for anyone that travelled with us, is the end of our dive into wrestling music. And I stand by it. If you didn't like it, too bad. Probably didn't pay for it anyway.
Salty.
If you are one of the subs that's miffed about it, we'll make it up to you somehow, don't worry. We have a couple of new ideas for shows that we're going to announce in the next couple of weeks, like themes for shows, which will especially affect you if you're a subscriber. So hopefully that'll get us back in your good books. However, there is one more thing to do, as I'm sure you know. We have a nexus, for our number one choices, and I'm false modesty be damned, especially because we're talking about wrestling where false modesty just doesn't fly. Mine is a fucking Bobby Dazzler.
Mine is fine. I probably could have done better, to be honest.
This is the first time we're seeing Nexus tonight. Will it be the last? What do they have in store for us? Not good.
Why am I here? You're in the Nexus. This is the Nexus. For you, this is what you want.
I'm going to ask you to go first then, because I want to finish big.
Okay. So my number one song was, of course, The Game by Motorhead, which is the theme tune for Mr. Triple H, Paul Levesque himself. Paul Levesque is actually married to Vince McMahon's daughter, if you didn't know that. Stephanie McMahon. And Vince McMahon is, of course, the patriarch. He's the man in charge of all. He sees all. He still has the final say over anything that happens in any of the episodes. Even to this day, it's actually like an iron grip, like a vice grip on power.
It's insane when you consider how big that company is, that one guy still has veto power, make or break.
Yep.
It's wild.
It must be hugely inefficient to work for. Like, it must be cripplingly inefficient as an organisation.
Well, you see it in the quality of the product.
Yeah. But a few years ago, in the early mid 2000s, I would say, WWE thought about a really good idea to get into the movie game.
They did, in a big way. Yeah.
And they have been ever since. They've actually had a couple of Netflix exclusives recently as well. But I don't know if you know. It's not something that you would really know much about in Britain, I don't think, but they seem to have an alliance with Hanna-Barbera, and they've done cartoons with the Jetsons and Scooby-Doo and all that, and WWE Superstars and stuff.
Did not know that.
Yeah, so Mr. McMahon has appeared as himself in the WWE Studios animated film called The Jetsons and WWE Robo WrestleMania. Now, I'm going back a little bit of my knowledge here, but I believe the dog in the Jetsons is called Astro. Is that right? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So Astro is voiced by a gentleman called Frank Welker, and he is a very well-known voice actor. He's done a lot of voiceover work. Not well-known, but he's done a lot of work, I suppose. He was actually in a film in 1972 called Dirty Little Billy, where he played Young Punk, which is a great name for a character, I suppose. Which is actually a film which is about the origin of Billy the Kid. Also in that film was legendary mental cunt Gary Busey.
Oh no! I mean, he's on brand with McMahon and all that as well.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Gary Busey's obviously starred in quite a lot of films, including one called The Firm, which stars a Mr. Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise.
And Tom Cruise is the Running Man. He is a very famous actor, of course, and he was actually in Stanley Kubrick's final film with his then wife Nicole Kidman called Eyes Wide Shut, in which Ligeti's Musica Requirata was used. So yeah,
very good.
There we go. But I've got a wee bit of a sort of sidebar I want to add into that there. Ligeti's music is probably most well known for Kubrick fans because it's used a few times in 2001, and a lot of the score was actually influenced by his work. But he was never credited for the music, and it was modified without his permission, and they did not have clearance to use the music in the film. So he ended up suing Stanley Kubrick, and it was settled out of court.
Yeah, well, the music for 2001 AD wasn't meant to be that music. Stanley Kubrick put them in as placeholders and then tried to get original compositions to do the same job, and then the original compositions didn't work anywhere near as well as the placeholders that they'd put in, and then somehow they ended up just going ahead without clearing it.
But one of the things that I think is really interesting is he then went on to use his music again. He used it in The Shining, and he used it in Eyes Wide Shut. So...
possibly though, to try and those times he did it legitimately, and it was maybe to try and sort of smooth things over and say, okay, I beg your pardon, we'll get you some royalties this way by using it again. Plus it just really worked. Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the Running Man. Let's talk about a different Running Man during this Nexus. Okay, so my choice was obviously Real American by Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan actually took the name Hulk Hogan from an appearance on a late 70s talk show. I think it was in Memphis, and he was appearing alongside a guy called Lou Ferrigno, and Lou Ferrigno was the Incredible Hulk at the time. Lou Ferrigno was a really famous bodybuilder, but also liked to paint himself green and lift cars, and I think when he was on that, and I think it was somebody related to Jeff Jarrett that was there, and somebody commented anyway that Hulk was sort of making Lou Ferrigno look quite small comparatively. So Hulk went from being Terry Bolleo to Terry Boulder, and then Terry the Hulk Boulder. Also, by the way, this is brilliant, but I didn't realise that he also in the early days wrestled under the name Sterling Golden. Which definitely sounds like a fake bank account that you'd set
I should have called my solo project that, if I'm honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Lou Ferrigno is also the star of, or one of the stars of a film called Pumping Iron, which is really ostensibly about Arnold Schwarzenegger, but focuses in a large part on the rivalry between him and Lou Ferrigno. Lou Ferrigno was the kind of upstart, and Arnie was the sort of like the master. And I think it was meant to be his last competition when he went up against Ferrigno, and Arnie came out on top. And then I think he stayed on one more year and won again. But that's kind of the underlying theme of that. Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is an absolutely fucking amazing thread that I just sort of happened to stumble across. Okay, so let's go deep in this. All right. In the 1970s, and this is a conspiracy theory. Okay.
Oh no.
But it's out there, and it has been covered by different publications.
Okay.
In the 1970s, Arnold Schwarzenegger supposedly lived and spent some time training in London, but he also did some work during that time, supposedly, allegedly, for loan sharks, and that involved recovering gambling debts.
I've heard about this.
Okay, so in the course of his recovering gambling debts, so the theory goes, one of these debtors included Lord Lucan.
Whoa.
Okay.
Jeez.
Lord Lucan, also known as John Bingham's 7th Earl of Lucan, is very famous because he went very missing in the 70s. The theory goes, and I very much stress it's a theory, that the theory goes that Lord Lucan made a deal with Arnold Schwarzenegger to kill Lord Lucan's wife, Lady Veronica Lucan, in order to try and somehow, I don't know, sell the house, get some kind of payoff to settle this debt, this enormous gambling debt that he was very famous for having amassed. Lord Lucan was a notorious gambler. And also, supposedly to incentivise Arnold Schwarzenegger to go along with this, he'd said he would help Arnold Schwarzenegger obtain a green card. So, this conspiracy theory goes that Arnold Schwarzenegger went to the house to kill Lady Veronica Lucan and mistook the nanny Sandra Rivet, who was killed, for Lady Veronica Lucan. So Arnold Schwarzenegger allegedly killed the wrong person. Now, Lord Lucan realised, tried to kill his wife, who then later is recorded as having turned up in a local pub covered in blood. Lord Lucan panicked, and him and Arnie went on the run to the coast, at which point Arnie decided, I can't have him turn me in, and killed Lord Lucan and buried him. Et voila, Lord Lucan has been missing since 1974, declared dead officially in 2016 because
Arnie killed him.
Supposedly Arnie killed him.
Fucking hell, man.
And Arnie killed Sandra Rivet, apparently. Interestingly, though, Lord Lucan's wife, Veronica Lucan, who he supposedly tried to kill, committed suicide a year after he was finally declared dead. This story, by the way, didn't just come out the ether. It emerged from a guy called Giovanni Di Stefano. Have you ever heard of this guy?
The name's familiar, but I don't know why.
He is the fake lawyer known as the Devil's Advocate, and that's because he represented Saddam Hussein, Slobodan Milosevic, all kinds of people, despite having never ever obtained any legal qualifications whatsoever. He completely blagged himself into defending some of the worst mass murderers and most genocidal maniacs in the world. So this is a guy that claimed he had the inside tack on what happened to Lord Lucan, and he says it was Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Wow.
That's
a rabbit hole, mate. That's a rabbit hole.
Yeah. So, Lord Lucan, during the course of his gambling, became very good friends with a Mr. Ian Fleming.
Oh, that guy.
And in fact, Lord Lucan's family later bought Ian Fleming's house. So it goes that in 1969, Lord Lucan turned down the offer from Albert R. Broccoli to replace Sean Connery as James Bond.
What?
Now, yeah, supposedly on the specific suggestion of Ian Fleming, who knew Lord Lucan really well. I don't know if the character was in some way reflecting Lord Lucan, or more that Lord Lucan really, really liked the James Bond character. I mean, he even went to the extent of buying an Aston Martin, and everything about his lifestyle, his demeanour and stuff reflected what he saw as being James Bond. But yeah, Lord Lucan was asked to replace Sean Connery, and he turned it down. James Bond James Bond themes that almost were. How about Debbie Harry or Blondie doing For Your Eyes Only in 1981? That almost happened.
Don't try turning the tables on me. Too long and too lonely. For your eyes only.
Got dropped in favour of, I think it was Sheena Easton did that one. Johnny Cash was meant to do Thunderball in 65.
Whoa.
Alice Cooper did a version of The Man with the Golden Gun in 1974 that was too glam metal.
Is that available
for them.
for listening? Because I would like to hear that.
With the golden gun, he's waiting somewhere out there for you.
And this is an absolute ripper. In 1995, the theme tune for GoldenEye was meant to be performed by Ace of Base.
What?
Our old friends, neo-Nazis, Ace of Base.
Jeez.
And Ace of Base's producers apparently dismissed it and were like, no, we're not doing that. But the track that they'd written, they later reworked and re-released as a tune called Juvenile, which you can be damn sure I'm going to factor in here.
The juvenile in a time where the night is so cold. The juvenile has the key to the end.
Ace of Base are the third biggest earning Swedish act of all time. Number 2 being My Beloved Roxette, and number 1 obviously
Clearly.
being ABBA.
Yes.
ABBA's manager, Mr. Stig Anderson, founded the Polar Music Prize in 1989, and that's run every year since. And every year they nominate a classical and a contemporary composer or songwriter. And in 2004, that was awarded to Gheorghe Ligeti. He was described as having stretched the bounds of what is musically conceivable.
Awesome. Well done.
There you go.
Well done.
Back of the net. Healthy long episode this week, Mark.
Yes.
I need to split that for the hardcore fans. This is what happens when Dave's not here to tell us that he needs to go and have his dinner.
Yeah. I knew we'd get there in the end, though.
So I believe, I really hope you've made it through that. I mean, I'm just glad we got that out of our system.
Yep. I feel like our weight's been lifted.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of good stuff in there. A lot of good stuff in there. I mean, you're not going to hear me saying this if you sniffed at it, because you probably switched off ages ago to go and listen to Pod Save America or fucking Joe Rogan or some shite. Okie doke. Mark's your week next week. I understand you have a rather fantastic nomination.
The Ugly Organ by Cursive. Yeah, so we know that...
So we're getting all hip again.
Yeah, we know that this band have been in the ether for a while, and people have suggested Cursive 2 is... I don't know about you, but to me personally they have. And they're a band that I was very familiar with in the sort of mid-2000s when this album came out, but then kind of fell away from them as I grew older. Unsurprisingly, they've kept releasing records. So it'll be good to dive into that. I don't know about you, man, but I've actually started doing some research, and I think it's going to be an interesting episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to be an interesting
episode.
I
started doing research when I went to see them about 15 years ago, so it'll be an interesting one. I see we're trying to balance out what is probably the most chronically unhip episode we've ever done this week with some super hip next time.
I'm sure it'll go down well.
Let's hope it works. Or we're just so erratic that nobody hangs around anymore.
Yes.
Thanks for listening. As we say, we've got a couple of ideas for subscribers. We'd love it if you do subscribe. There's some pretty cool stuff in there, some special episodes, bonus episodes, and a couple of other incentives. We've also got a special AAA backstage area now where we can kind of engage in more free-flowing dialogue with the kind of long-term and hardcore listeners, and it means that we're a bit easier to reach if you've got ideas for a show or suggestions for a show. We've already, as Mark says, we've had a couple of those. We're getting a lot of good feedback. So if you want to talk to us direct, it's couple of bucks.
Literally $2.
And you get a whole host of other things. So go to the Patreon. And until our much hipper next episode, look after yourselves. Fuck you, Dave, with the wrestling episode. You dick.